a fun, competitive game between your Houston Rockets and the best team in the association, the Phoenix Suns. It was filled with a ton of different Rockets highlights on Rockets social media night, which was also a ton of fun. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about what we saw out of this Rockets team, maybe some of the parallels between where this Rockets team is now and where the Phoenix Suns found themselves a few years ago. We're also going to get into Jalen Green. What makes him a future superstar in this league, how he gets it. He understands where the Rockets are at and where they want to be. We're going to get into all of that and more here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
With the second pick in the 2021 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Jalen Green.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting better every day. I'm going to keep perfecting my craft. And every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jae'Sean Gatlin, native Houstonian and also host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. What a fun game between the Houston Rockets and the Phoenix Suns. The Rockets, of course, ultimately falling 129 to 112, but a really, competitive game, albeit it started off not super competitive. Then it got competitive, and then there were moments near the tail end of the game where the Suns just kind of broke it wide open. We're going to get into the game flow. We'll get into talking a little bit about Jalen Green and his understanding of where the Rockets are at and what makes him, I think, what stands out about him moving forward, and why you should be confident in Jalen Green as a future superstar in this league. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the Rockets social media night shenanigans, all the fun from this one. But as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. We always appreciate it. But let's get into, I want to start with Jalen Green first off, who in this game, Jalen had a really impressive night. He continues to fill it up. Jalen had, 22 points on 9 of 15, shooting 4 of 6 from behind the three-point line. He had 2 boards. He had 3 assists. He had a steal. He had probably possibly a top 5 Jalen Green highlight so far in his career, which was him absolutely putting Landry Shamet on skates, just a filthy little step back, and he froze Shamet and had him gone. Just it was absolutely disgusting. Jalen Green, really impressive in this game, and he continues his impressive streak because now Jalen is, he had the team high Rockets for 22 points. He scored 20 plus points in 8 of the past 12 games, doing that just 9 times in the 42 games before that. Jalen's now averaging 21.4 points a night, 4.3 assists, and shooting 54.5% from the floor over these past 8 games. The last rookie to have averaged at least 20 points and 4 assists while shooting 54% or better across an 8-game span was Damian Lillard back during his rookie season. So some solid company for Jalen Green. And then the thing that really stood out to me, and I had to go double check my numbers on this after this game against the Suns, but in the first 4 months of the season, from mid-October, when the season started, to mid-February, so about a month ago, Jalen was the leading scorer for the Rockets 6 times. Over this last month of the season, right, from mid-February to where we are now, mid-March, Jalen has been the leading scorer 7 times. That is, I think, an insane stat, and that shows the growth of Jalen Green. And I think specifically one of the things, too, that stood out is post-game, Jalen was asked about the Phoenix Suns and about just kind of what he sees looking at them as a team, and I think that his answer was honestly really, really impressive. So I want to talk about it. I want to run it back, and then I want to talk about it.
I think just how they all play together, and get everyone going, get everyone involved, and they play together as a team. Offense, defensively, slaps coming into the fourth, in the third, at halftime. They just all locked in from start to finish. Just feel the chemistry. Everyone's talking, communicating, moving around, getting people open. Like everything they're doing was with a purpose.
And it's that last line, which shout out to Adam Spolane for asking the follow-up question that led to the second answer there from Jalen, just kind of in what he sees, from the Phoenix Suns. And it's that line of, just everything that they do out there has a purpose. But you can hear Jalen when he's talking about what he's seeing out of the Phoenix Suns. And I mean, it really stands out. Like Jalen understands the big picture stuff. Like he just gets basketball, man. And that to me is something that is going to shine. And it's what's ultimately going to make him a superstar in this league, because you can take a guy who's got all the raw athleticism, all the talent, whatever. You can take a guy and you can even give him some basketball skills on top of that. But it goes back to those intangibles and the things that Jalen was essentially sold on, or the Rockets were sold on when it came to Jalen. When scouting him, when doing the reporting on him, trying to figure out if he was their guy, it's those intangibles that it comes down to. And I think Jalen, for being just a kid, right, he gets it. He understands he's got the athleticism. He's got the raw physical tools. He's also got an insane amount of skill already at a ridiculously young age. And then on top of that, he understands the work that is going to have to be put in. The fact that it's a team game, the fact that he's got to lead by example defensively, the fact that it doesn't matter if he's putting up his numbers as long as he's helping his team win in other ways of the floor. And we've seen him make so many significant jumps already this season. I don't know how you can't be optimistic about his future and his potential to turn into a superstar one day in this league. And I loved this matchup against the Suns, which I'll get into some of the game flow here in a little bit. In segment 2, talk about kind of what we saw, how the game started, how it went, who stood out, all these, the specific highlight moments from this game. But it was almost like, this weird like preview, right, of where the Suns were a few years back, right? They had, that 4 or 5 year gap where they were struggling, the transitional period for the Suns. And then they had that first season, and then they went, the 8-0 in the bubble, and they really took off. And obviously adding Chris Paul to the mix was what sent them to the next level. But that's kind of where the Rockets may find themselves in the not so distant future, is they've got this young, amazing group of, young players, so much talent, going to add another top prospect to this, already exciting young core. And then, next season is probably the season where they are a bit more competitive, right? Maybe vying for a play-in spot, that kind of thing. Maybe they make even a bigger jump than we think they're going to make next season, possibly. And then you add in that veteran, right? Like you find your Chris Paul type guy. Maybe not somebody that quite that old, but you find your upset superstar. You find the next big free agency signing. Maybe you make a splash by trading John Wall as an expiring contract, or you just let his contract fall off the books and you sign somebody outright in 2023 free agency. Who knows what direction they're going to go, but the Rockets have done a beautiful job teeing themselves up to be in the right position, to be in the mix, to make themselves relevant within the next 2 to 3 years, honestly. Like, we're not looking down the barrel of an insanely long rebuild, and a big part of that has been Jalen Green, kind of shining as, the way that he has, especially this last month or so of the season. I highlighted the fact that he's been the leading scorer for the Rockets the last, 7 times within the last month, and it was really cool to see him kind of, at one point in this game, right, kind of trading buckets with Devin Booker, and it was kind of that glimpse into, man, this is maybe what Jalen's going to be able to do, a couple years from now, right? Maybe we're getting a glimpse at the future with Devin Booker going off inside Toyota Center. But coming up, I want to talk a little bit about the game flow, a little bit about the streaks in this game, the different highlight moments that we saw in this one. And we're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at Athletic Greens. Because look, Athletic Greens is something that I just started using maybe a few weeks back now, because honestly, I haven't been somebody who's really done a good job of like taking care of myself and my body. And, this is a way that I've been able to really work on, essentially taking care of my body and really investing in my body. And it's so simple. AG1, you basically take a little scoop, you mix it into, a water bottle or whatever. I don't have mine on my desk. I left it in the kitchen. But basically you just take a little scoop of AG1, put it in your water bottle, mix it up, shake it together, drink it. It really is the easiest way to turn around and kind of invest in your body. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity. And the best part is it's so cheap. It costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health. And it's cheaper than, coffee. It's cheaper than, buying a bunch of different supplements and trying to take care of all of this yourself. You can just get it all in one little easy scoop that you take every single day. Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost about $100 a day. So instead, they came up with this, and it is really the best, easiest way to be able to invest in your body. And to make it so easy for our listeners, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, appreciate you making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you listen to this podcast. But let's get into the kind of game flow from this one, because from the jump, it looked like the Suns were going to come in and just absolutely spoil Rockets' social media night, because they jumped out to a 16-2 lead. And I looked up and I thought DeAndre Ayton was going to actually break Kobe's 81 or maybe Wilt's 100-point game, because I looked up and Ayton had 14 points in the first quarter. But the way that he was playing within the first 4 minutes of the game, again, I thought I was looking at Wilt Chamberlain out there. And it's kind of a concerning trend that opposing centers kind of walk in and start having their way with the Rockets, especially early. But a big part of that was just the defensive rotations just did not feel correct at all in the first quarter. And credit to the Rockets, they've been able to make those adjustments. So like DeAndre Ayton, right? He had the 14 first quarter points in this one. But then the Rockets turned around and they held him to 23 the rest of the way. So that's, pardon me, that's a bit encouraging that they were able to make those adjustments and stop giving him so many easy buckets, especially after the 14-point first quarter. But what really stood out in this game is, in addition to Jalen and just his assertiveness in this one, and kind of that assertiveness that we've seen grow over this last month or so, maybe month and a half or so of the season, basically ever since early February, Jalen had himself, a really impressive game, 22 points. Again, Rockets team high, 9 of 15 shooting. Kevin Porter Jr. also had a really impressive game, 21 points on 7 of 15 shooting. He had 8 assists. He did have 3 turnovers in this one. But again, as long as you see that assist-to-turnover ratio, and as long as it's about 2-to-1 or better, I consider that a win for KPJ. Anything in his assist-to-turnover ratio column that's 2-to-1 or better, you absolutely love to see. But what really stood out for the Rockets on their end of things is the injection of life that they get off the bench. And when I say off the bench, especially in this one, we're talking about 4 names here, and that's KJ Martin, Alperen Sengun, Dennis Schroeder, and Josh Christopher. But obviously Dennis Schroeder is the new guy on the block here, and he did have himself a solid game in this one, 17 points, 7 of 13 shooting. Did a good job facilitating, had 6 assists to just the 1 turnover. Exactly what you want to see out of Dennis Schroeder when he's kind of that, 6th man spark plug off the bench for the Rockets, kind of helping to steer and facilitate things. But it's those other 3 that have stood out, not just in this game, but over the course of the season. And it's the chemistry that you see on display on a nightly basis between Alperen Sengun and KJ Martin and Josh Christopher, and how those guys all feed off of one another in that second unit, and how fluid things look, right? Because they really do understand how to utilize Alp at times, how to cut, how to utilize him on screens, and they just really, really work well with one another. And so seeing one, it helped DeAndre Ayton, or DeAndre Wilt Chamberlain Ayton, going to the bench helped the Rockets go on their run at the end of the first quarter. But the Rockets were able to close that gap. After starting 16-2, they finished the first quarter and they were only down 4 to the Suns, 35-31. So having that chance to kind of fight their way back into the game with the help of the second unit was really nice to see. And I haven't decided if it's if it's a good thing that they've been able to fight back from being down so much, or if it's a bad thing that they have found themselves falling down so much. Probably a little bit of both, right? It's probably bad that they're, having these lapses where they fall down like that, but it's also good to see that they can, string together some stops and get the right buckets and then find themselves back into a game, even at one point leading the Suns later in this one after, playing a really competitive first half with a couple cappers from Kevin Porter Jr., who had, he had a 3 to close the half, which was impressive. Those, not quite buzzer beater, right? But those buckets to end the half, or to end a quarter, those momentum buckets are huge, especially for a young team, fighting against the best team in the association. To get a bucket like that, to carry some momentum into, the second half or into the next quarter is always huge for this Rockets team. But KPJ had the most ridiculous in-game, I say the most ridiculous, and then it was actually like almost one-upped by his own teammate later in the game. But KPJ had the, Rockets forced the turnover mid-court, and KPJ bounces the ball off the floor to himself, goes up and yams it in, a self-pass in the middle of a game. How disrespectful is that? To do that to a team that not only you're trailing, but to do that to the best team in the association when you're the worst team in the association. I absolutely thought that was hilarious. Great highlight for KPJ. Awesome moment from this game. And it would have potentially been like almost, I think the highlight from the game is Jalen Green, putting Landry Shamet on skates. That was incredible. Yes. But then Alperen Şengün later in the game he drops JaVale McGee first off. And then as he's getting to the rim, tries to lob a pass to himself off the glass. And I believe it was Torrey Craig who got in there and kind of broke it up. But Alp was still able to finish it and kind of tip the ball in and still got credited with the 2 points. But the fact that Alp thought to try that mid-game, just the crazy stuff that he does. After the game, Steven Silas was asked about the, off the floor dunk from KPJ and then Alp off the window. And Silas just kind of looked at it and he almost had this sigh, I'm wrangling the kids kind of sigh. And he was like, I'm a basketball purist, so it's kind of, different for me to see. He didn't say it was bad, but I do think this is one of those things where this is a young, exciting group. They want to play, exciting, fun basketball. And at times, right, you just have to let a player go, right? We've seen it with Greg Popovich when he had to learn to just let Manu Ginobili be Manu Ginobili. We saw it with Steve Kerr where he had to resign himself to let Steph Curry be Steph Curry, let them do some of the crazy crap that they're going to do on the court because, sometimes it's going to be a turnover, right? Sometimes it's going to end poorly. Other times, you're going to walk away with highlight reel plays, with plays that, inject life and energy into the building, into the fans, into their teammates, all of that stuff. And sometimes you just have to let a player be themselves on the floor. And I think that, we've seen Steven Silas do a good job of letting these Rockets kind of be themselves, at their own pace at times on the floor. He's not trying to, wrangle them and, shoehorn them into a certain role or anything. And it was just a funny reaction from Steven Silas in his post-game presser. But I mean, hey, the Rockets really pushed and, at one point tied this game up in the third quarter, and it looked like they might really make a game of it. Unfortunately, the Suns kind of broke things open to end that third quarter. It finished, a 36-24 quarter is not great for the Rockets at the end of the day. They went into the fourth quarter with a 13-point lead, and at one point the Rockets had pushed. They, cut it to single digits late in the fourth, and Devin Booker said no. Devin Booker came down, hit a tough three-pointer, and then hit another back-to-back triples from Devin Booker to basically say, yeah, this game's over, you're done. And that was kind of all she wrote, unfortunately, in this one. It was a fun, exciting game, though. I do want to follow up with a couple moments that I want to circle back to. And then I also want to get into some of the Rockets social media night shenanigans from this game. But first, I've got a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline because, look, it's that time of year again. We've got the March Madness tournament right around the corner, and that, BetOnline is going to have you covered with all the latest odds, contests, player props, It's always your number one source for sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And look, it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, appreciate you for making Locked On Rockets your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. I host the Monday show. It's always a ton of fun. Be sure to check it out. Now, for this final segment, kind of just some throw-ins from the game that I don't want to miss out on. But from this one, I will say just very quickly here on the Phoenix side of things, I mean, Devin Booker was absolutely on one in this. I honestly felt like the Rockets did a solid job of adjusting and, fixing some of their defensive rotations to prevent the easy buckets that DeAndre Ayton was getting early in the game. But they did give up some easy ones to guys like, Torrey Craig, who went off for 21 and 14, or, Mikal Bridges, who finished with 26 points on 10 of 17 shooting. I talked about Ayton's 23 already, and then Booker, 15 of 24 on his way to his 36 points. The Suns were kind of getting, honestly, whatever they wanted, but I will say that the Rockets made Devin Booker work for a lot of his shots, right? And I think there's some of that vision there, right? Devin Booker's one of the guys that, Rockets fans have kind of comped Jalen Green to potentially, right? Like a more athletic Devin Booker. And I do think that this game is, potentially, like, right, I said earlier, like a preview of things to come with, what Jalen could potentially become at the NBA level. And I do like that in this game we saw Devin Booker scoring at so many different levels, right? We really did see him scoring effectively in a variety of ways. He didn't make it to the free throw line all but the one time, but we saw him scoring in the mid-range. We saw him scoring at the cup. We saw him scoring from beyond the arc. D-Book is a guy who can get it done really anywhere on the floor. And I think that now that we've seen Jalen kind of unlock that mid-range game, that's where you get into more of the optimism of, like Jalen's going to be able to, he's already able to create his own shot at such a high level. But then to see the difficulty of shots that Devin Booker is able to hit when he has it going like he did tonight, to kind of envision that down the line for Jalen, where he's able to just take over a game start to finish and make it look effortless. I mean, you looked up, and I don't want to say it was like a quiet 36 for Devin Booker, but he made it look effortless. Like, even though the Rockets were doing a really solid job contesting a lot of those shots, again, the two buckets to end the game, he just kind of, he walked into a really tough pull-up three, the second one. Some of his shots were wide open, sure, but some of the middies that he was hitting were like tightly contested, coming off screens with a defender right in his face. I thought Josh Christopher did a pretty solid job in the minutes that he had to guard D-Book, and it didn't matter. And sometimes it just doesn't matter. Now, the Rockets' game plan was to try and blitz him, and they didn't do a good enough job of that, trying to make other guys beat you. And that's where you want to see a little bit more emphasis placed on the urgency at times, kind of fighting Devin Booker out of the pick and roll. But then there were times where he was just beating him one-on-one, right? It wasn't just out of the pick and roll where Booker was killing them. And so that kind of makes it a bit harder to blitz, because the Suns are just a good team. They understand how to move the ball around the floor and how to get to the open man and where the cutters are. And there's a reason that they're the number one team in the association. But on the Rocket side of things, just kind of want to roll down this list and make sure I don't forget anybody here. I do like that in this game, right, where the Rockets had a lot of success with Dennis Schroeder on the floor, kind of filling that veteran role that maybe EG would normally fill. We did see minutes where Schroeder, Jalen, and KPJ all shared the floor at the same time. Enjoyed those minutes. Also really enjoyed the minutes where we got Jalen, KPJ, and Josh on the floor all at the same time. It really feels like we don't see enough of those specific like 3-guard lineups, because obviously we see them with EG out there, but Josh and especially Dennis too feel like they're different types of ball handlers than EG is. And to see those guys on the floor with the Rockets, starting backcourt, it does feel pretty productive, having guys who can get into the driving kick game, being able to, attack from both sides of the floor and being able to really get running in transition. And So those kind of 3-guard sets that we saw in this game with the absence of EG were really fun, and hopefully it's something we see see more of continuing moving forward as we wrap up this season. But one of the other things, and I've highlighted this recently, was KJ Martin, who continues to play really, really impressive basketball, and he looks so much better driving to the rim, so much more comfortable, so much more confident. He had one, I don't even know how he did it, driving in baseline and like somehow gets around JaVale McGee and rises up and almost puts JaVale McGee like on an insane two-handed poster. I don't know how KJ gets the jumps that he does, but it's like he just blinks in the air and suddenly he's above the rim. I don't even understand the angles at which he sometimes jumps. And that was an insane move. And then he had the one in transition where, I apologize, it wasn't in transition. He got the ball right as the Suns were kind of setting their half-court defense and just drove it in, and the defender had no choice but to foul him, and he was just strong enough to just kind of power up and barely finger roll the ball in for the and one, which wound up missing the free throw, but then the Rockets played, some volleyball at the rim. Daishen Nix and Alperen Sengun playing some volleyball, and Alp was able to get the tap in off of the missed free throw. So, a 4-point play, not quite the old-fashioned way for the Rockets, but still a 4-point play nonetheless off of the KJ Martin missed free throw. But his continued development and performance has been really great to see. It's kind of crazy to think that he was the guy that found himself out of the rotation earlier this season. I'm glad that he has been a staple of the rotation moving forward. And something that I want to tackle probably in our next episode is it time to start the discussion of KJ Martin versus Jae'Sean Tate and who is a better complementary player for the starting lineup? And so that's something that I want to tackle probably in our next episode, maybe, a couple episodes down the line, but that's a big topic that I want to dive into here in the not so distant future. But again, some really impressive continued play from KJ Martin. And then how can I not talk about some of these shenanigans from Rockets social media night, which was a ton of fun. Shout out to the Rockets organization for passing out a bunch of tickets and inviting a lot of the fans off of Twitter, and being able to do these ticket giveaways all season has been really, really cool. And then to see so many of the familiar faces that we know and love through Rockets Twitter, all in one place at the game. We did another halftime meetup at this game against the Phoenix Suns, and it was really cool to see everybody there. But they did the post-game Q&A with Josh Christopher and Alperen Sengun, moderated by Craig Ackerman, of course, the voice of your Houston Rockets, and also Rico Rodriguez, big fan of Locked On Rockets and complete Houston Rockets diehard, was in town and was a part of the event as well. It was a ton of fun. Some really funny answers shared by Alp and Josh, and you could just tell, again, those two guys are so tight. Josh was, the guy who really, I think did a good job of embracing Alp, early for this team, because Josh's brother has played overseas and so, knows a little bit of Turkish. And that was one of the early things that we found out in training camp, is that Josh already knew the word for like brother/friend in Turkish, which is kanki, right? Yeah. So, and I had to double check it. I tweeted it out, but I completely spaced on the word. I believe it's kanki. And so I hope that's right. But, he had shouted that out a couple times throughout the Q&A session. Like whenever something came up about, chemistry or how those two play together or whatever, you just hear Josh go kanki, and he's so excited about it the whole time. Like you could tell he and Alp are so close. And some of the stories that they were able to share were really, really cool. Like Josh talked about his welcome to the NBA moment was against Trae Young, and how Trae had kind of gotten the better of him a couple times in that Atlanta game that the Rockets ultimately came back and won, which was one of the more exciting games of the season. But Josh was like, I can play defense, but the guys in the NBA are good. And he was like, I didn't know I had to be strapped up like that to, again. So Josh had his welcome to the NBA moment. And then Alperen Şengün kind of shared his welcome to the NBA moment, which actually happened not on camera for us to enjoy, I guess, but he shared that it was actually in a 5-on-5 practice, and KJ dunked on him in 5-on-5 practice, and apparently like everybody on the team was like, welcome to the NBA, baby. And like Alp's like sharing this in English, like full blown. Like he did a really, shout out to Alp, who did a really, really impressive job of doing his absolute best to answer as many questions as he could in English throughout the Q&A session. Now, there were times when he went to his translator OG and kind of, had to reiterate something or kind of waited, asked a question like, hey, how do I say this? Or like, but there were a ton of great answers right out of the gate. He looked down at his t-shirt and he was like, Craig had asked him about the t-shirt and he looked down and he was like, this is not me. This doesn't look like me. I'm so mad. And like he said it so jokingly, it was really fun. It was just all in all a really cool night for Rockets fans to be able to appreciate the players. And Josh stayed after the Q&A session to sign a bunch of the Josh t-shirts and some jerseys and stuff for the fans. Like you can really tell he's so excited about, just having this opportunity, being an NBA player. Both of them are like, they're so bought into everything going on. And to top it all off, like on a personal note, as I was leaving Toyota Center, as everything was wrapped up for the Rockets and the Q&A session was over, all of that, I hit the elevator to head back out to the parking garage to go back out to my car. And I actually got on the elevator with Josh and a couple of the guys with him. And sometimes that happens inside Toyota Center, and you don't fan out about it. You're just like, hey, what's up? And get in the elevator, and Josh looks at me and he goes, oh man, I love your podcast. And I just about died on the spot. It was a pretty cool moment. I'm not gonna lie, to have him say that, because to know that a player, a current player, somebody is checking out the work that you're putting out, is always really amazing. And it just kind of shows, what we've done here. And I say we because it's not just me, because Locked on Rockets wouldn't be what it is without you, without the listener, without the viewer. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I've done this show for a little over 3 years now. And so now I'm going to get a little sappy at the tail end here of the episode. But I've done this show for not a little over 3 years, a little under 3 years, a little over 3 seasons now covering the Rockets. And this is my first season being full-blown credentialed. And I'll peel the curtain back a little bit. This season's been kind of difficult for me for a lot of reasons, just because the workflow is different, being at the games in person for all the home games, and, being there early for pregame with Steven Silas, and kind of staying late for the post-game questions, and trying to do right by the fans and ask the right questions, and generate the right discussions regarding the team. It's a different workflow than being at home and just watching the game, like on my laptop or on TV or something. And not only that, but just there have been some personal reasons that I've been sidelined at times throughout this season. Unfortunately, this is the first full season that we've been on YouTube, and that's been really exciting and fun, but also a lot more work on the back end with editing and production and prep and all of this. So I just want to say shout out to you, to the diehard Rockets fans, the people who check out this show, whether it's podcast form or YouTube form, tuning in to listen and to learn and enjoy and weep about a team that is the worst team in the association, and to still see, you guys tune in and listen and enjoy the content that we put out with, the guests that I try to bring on and keep interesting discussions going, all of that. It really does mean the world to me. And I try not to get into these little, sappy, like, thank you type, whatevers on the show, but I will just say, like, that was just a really cool moment for me to see that, Josh appreciates the show and enjoys the show, but the show wouldn't be what it is without you and without your support, be it the years of support, with Ben Dubose, the Podfather himself, all those years, and then me taking it over as the next host. I did run into somebody at the stadium who said what's up and told me, hey, like, I've been listening for forever, since back when Dubose was, in charge, and he said, I was worried that the show wasn't going to be the same when you took over, but you kept it and you made it even better and all this. And it's just one of those moments where it's kind of surreal. So I'm sorry for getting sappy here at the end of the episode, but Rockets social media night was a total success. And hey, the Rockets also, even though they lost, right? It was a competitive game. So, exactly what you want to see out of the Rockets at this point in the season, right? Competitive game against a good team, and they wound up losing, which, hey, it helps the lottery odds at this point, which I had actually gotten away from it. So I will end this episode after my sappy little rant. Not a rant, my sappy little thank you. Yeah, we're going to call it a thank you because it wasn't a rant. Rant has a negative connotation. It was a sappy little thank you for listening to Locked on Rockets. We're going to run a lottery sim because we have to end the episode with a lottery sim. Oh, okay. And this was a good sim because the Rockets walk away with the number 1 overall pick. Oh, yes. And OKC got bumped down a spot and fell to number 5. So that's always good too. But a super fun little lottery sim here on Tankathon, which means the Rockets number 1 overall pick. Who would you want to see the Rockets take with the number 1 overall pick? I still think I'm on the Jabari Smith hype train, honestly. So we haven't talked about the top guys in the draft in a while. We're going to have to circle back here soon and start revisiting some of those top prospects as we near the end of the season. We're going to be doing more draft breakdowns, all of that stuff. Like I said earlier, probably our very next episode, I do want to get into that discussion of, is it time to start looking at the two of Jae'Sean Tate and KJ Martin and who fits better in the starting lineup for this Rockets team, what those two guys bring, pros, cons, all of that. But as always, thank you so much for watching the show. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, brand new Odyssey app, free and available on all platforms. Also, check us out on YouTube. Search Locked on Rockets on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.